Hello, Paideia scholars. Mr. Chambers coming here from our whole person sanctuary. We got beautiful Cluckingham Palace right behind me. And as I was harvesting our sunflowers from the last video, I found the most marvelous thing growing in our garden. Something I didn't even plant in our garden. Something so unexpected that I was so thrilled to find it. And what I'm talking about is mushrooms. Wonderful growing mushrooms right in our garden. Now, they may have been growing here for a day or two because they all look dried and shriveled up. But finding mushrooms is a great sign that we're doing something right in our garden. Mushrooms love compost. They love dead and rotting things, and they feed off it. The mushrooms that grow, they eat off of compost, dead, dying things. Well, the mushrooms that are growing right around the roots of some of these sunflowers that I harvested, and that tells me that the sunflowers lived their full cycle, as we saw in the last video. They used up all the nutrients that the roots could. They gave off their seeds like a sunflower should. And then the mushrooms, because of recent monsoons and so forth, found these roots and started eating away at the roots. And so let's take a look at some of these wonderful mushrooms we found here in our garden. So here we are at the stem of a sunflower. I cut this down, and after I cut it down, I found this bunch of wild mushrooms just growing here in our garden. And so I'm not an expert on mushrooms. I find them terribly fascinating, but I'm not an expert. So I needed some help. So I downloaded an app, and I'll show you how I use this app, where I'll take a picture of my mushrooms, and it will tell me what type of mushrooms they are. But as we find out, most mushrooms, about 95% of mushrooms that grow naturally in the desert where we live, they're going to be poisonous. Not poisonous to touch, but poisonous to eat. So even though they may look tasty, they may look like some mushrooms we've had on our pizzas before, these mushrooms that grow, they're going to be poisonous. So I don't want to throw them on top of a salad or anything. But let's take a look at that app I used and see how we can identify this mushroom. The app used for this is called Picture Mushroom. And when you get in there, you open up your camera, take a picture of the side of the mushroom, make sure you get the stem and cap all framed up in your picture. And then it will ask you to take a picture of the bottom, looking at the gills underneath of the cap with the stem facing up. And within 10 seconds, it will identify the mushroom. Here it's saying that it is a reddening lepiota, which is a toxic mushroom, a mushroom that can make you sick and give you diarrhea if consumed. So we do not want to eat this mushroom. They give you some potential pictures of what it could look like when it is fruiting, and it says that it is found in woodland settings across North America. And the reddening lepiota gets its name because if it is bruised or hurt, it turns a shade of red, unlike blue or black like most mushrooms. The reddening lepiota appears in wasted areas, on disturbed grass, in landscaping areas, tree removal sites, and rarely in the woods. It prefers very rich soil, and it grows on wood chips, sawdust, and compost piles near old stumps or dead wood. All right, so I've gathered up this tray of those mushrooms that we found in our garden near the roots of our sunflowers we harvested. And it was real easy to pick out of the garden. Just grab your hand and lightly pull, and they'll come on out. And you'll see that we've got a handful of mushrooms all clustered together in this one group. The mushrooms that we see here, they may be above ground for anywhere from 24 hours to a week at most. And the mushrooms are telling us that the whole fungal or fungus has done its job. It's run its course and found all the nutrients that it can get. And if we look down here, this kind of white spiderweb-like substance here, this is what connects all of our mushrooms together. And it's the part of the fungi that lasts a long time. It can last weeks, months, or even years, and it's called mycelium. The mycelium is this interconnected web that eats up the nutrients of dead and rotting things and makes the soil rich, much as our earthworms do in our Lear garden. And so, with our mushrooms here, they all cluster together and they fruit into the mushrooms that we see here, with our stems and our caps, and underneath we have our gills. These gills are how the mushroom releases more spores to make more mushrooms. Now you see I'm touching them with my bare hands. I need to remember, anytime I'm gardening, I want to wash my hands after I'm done gardening, just in case there's anything in here that I don't want in my body. We already know that these mushrooms may be poisonous to eat. Nothing says they are poisonous to touch, but I always want to be very careful. So I'm going to pick up an example here. We're going to look at its bottom. Here is the bottom where we see all those wonderful gills of this mushroom. And we saw in our research that this mushroom reddens when it's hurt or injured. I'm going to make a cut in to see if it does truly redden, to see if we've correctly identified what this mushroom will be. To test this out, I've got a knife here, and I'm going to make a little cut in the mushroom, cutting through the gills to see what happens. And I'm going to make a few incisions to see. Now, it says it might take a really long time for it to redden. So I'm just going to have my camera here, and we're going to watch to see if it reddens at where I cut it with my knife. So as we can see, near one of my first cuts here, we got some small little bits of red happening right here along the gills. And so we were correct with saying that this is a reddening lepiota. Okay? They are poisonous to eat, so I'm not going to eat this. However, we can appreciate all the hard work that the mycelium network does, and all the mushrooms do, to help us with our composting efforts to keep our soil nice and fresh, and to break down anything that might be dead in our soil, to help bring forth new life. Alright, so I've harvested my mushroom, and I wanted to test a theory to see just how deep the mycelium grows. So right in here, we see that white web. And that white web in here, it's the mycelium. It goes through the dirt. And we can follow the mycelium for quite a ways. On the surface, wider than my hand is from our mycelium. And that's the heart of the fungus there. It stays in this form for a while until the right conditions happen and it can fruit up to become mushrooms. As I dig a little deeper, you still see bits and pieces of this white mycelium network coming through our ground until we almost run into the roots of that sunflower I harvested. You see the white mycelium, thin and stringy like a spider's web. And then you get to the roots. The roots are the veins of the sunflower, and they eat up all that moisture. And so the mycelium and the roots, they work together to help both grow, to make our mushrooms, and make our sunflowers. Here's that root ball of that sunflower. It's massive, almost as big as my forearm, of how big it stretches across. But as we look at this, the soil's all gray. Well, that grayness is mycelium from our mushrooms. And so as I ease away the soil to put back into our garden, to break apart the roots so that they can be composted, you see this mycelium network. All the small, white, spiderweb-like substance mixed in with the roots. And it's digesting the roots. They know that the roots have done their job. They're helping it decompose naturally so that more fresh soil can be made for future plants to grow. All around this root ball, you have that mycelium network sharing and taking away nutrients from the roots because the roots have done their job, and it's time for something new in life to come into our garden in our future planning. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. This has been brought to you by Paideia Academy and the Take It Outside initiative and the Paideia Whole Person Sanctuary, presenting the edible ecosystem. Our mission is to naturally nourish the body, mind, heart, and spirit through growth, curiosity, connection, and discovery in the Paideia community. If you would like to help Paideia Academy's Take It Outside, you can visit paideiaacademy.com/donate to help contribute to keep the edible ecosystem, the whole person sanctuary, and all Paideia scholars going outside with their academics.